Hi, I'm Kelly at Book and Paper Arts. A few days ago, I had a flip through here on YouTube of this altered book where I showed one of the layouts which had this picture. Now, this beautiful flower started out as a page from a magazine, a gardening magazine. And I used some simple mixed media techniques to make it look more like a painting that I had done by hand. And I had a lot of comments that said, yes, please, we would like to see how to do that ourselves. So today I'm going to show how to take glossy pages from magazines or from coffee table books and turn them into something messy and distressed and beautiful and abstract. This was using a bird from a bird watching magazine. This was from a portrait from a coffee table book. These techniques are very versatile and no rules, and you can make it look very much like your own style. So let's get going and learn how to do it. If you like journal arts, please subscribe to my YouTube channel and be sure and turn on the notifications. And you will have more of them in your life. Let's go mess up some paper. First, let's talk about the materials that you're going to need. Starting with images. What you want are images from either a magazine or from a coffee table book. The great thing about these is that they're easy to source. Even if you live in a small town, if you go to your thrift shop or charity shop, yard sales, secondhand bookstores, and for goodness sake, don't forget to check your library. Even in small towns, they often have standing sales, and those sales, library book sales, will often have magazines. Gardening magazines, home decorating magazines, those are really popular almost anywhere in the world. So you're going to be able to find flowers and plants and landscapes that way. If you're like me and you like working with architectural images, think National Geographic. Places are pretty much would almost give those away. They have so many National Geographics. So think about what you like working with, images of animals, plants, landscapes, whatever. And you're probably going to find it. You just got to kind of know what you're looking for and get out there and hunt for it. Next, I'm going to be using gesso. I'm using just plain old, but if you don't have any on hand, another option is that you can make something like it on your own. I have a video here on YouTube explaining how to use simple household ingredients to make a faux clear gesso, and you can then use that as a kind of a primer and get a very similar technique to what we're doing today. I'm going to link to that video in the text box below. And if you don't have gesso on hand, have a look at that. I have a feeling I'm going to get asked whether you can do this technique with PVA, craft glue, or a gel matte medium. The answer is, I tried it and it doesn't not work, but you don't get the same pop that this works with the gesso. However, if that's what you've got, some craft glue or a gel matte medium, and you're out of gesso, by all means, I suggest that you try it, because it may not be the same effect, but you're going to get an effect, and you can play around with that and see where it takes you. The other thing that's important that we're going to need is something water soluble. My go-to is a water-soluble graphite pencil. and mine's by Karen Dash. And when you draw with this and then you get it wet, it activates and turns into a really inky dark look. You can also use a charcoal pencil. When wet, charcoal becomes semi-water soluble. You could use a watercolor pencil, or if you have Inktense sticks by Derwent. These are some also by Derwent. These are water-soluble graphite sticks, and I use these all the time. But you can also use a soft chalk pastel as a water-soluble. They actually, when you use these with water, it semi-activates them, and you get a pretty cool effect. So look around your workspace and see what you've got that would work for that. And finally, as an optional, at the end, if you'd like to add some shading and depth, you might want to add watercolor or ink or even watered down acrylic. That's kind of optional. Finally, you need a background page to put your glossy image on. I'm using text because that's my style, but you could also use watercolor paper or sketchbook paper. Maybe use a scrapbook pad. Those are easy to find and they come in fun backgrounds, or any other cardstock. The only thing is it needs to be matte. You can't this technique does not work as well on a glossy background because you need that matte flat paper to absorb your water solubles in the first place. So if you do go with text, see if you can go to the thrift store and just find any book that has flat pages rather than glossy. We're ready to go. I've glued my glossy image onto the flat paper, and I went around the whole thing with a charcoal pencil. This is where the magic starts. I've just drawn this heavy charcoal border. And again, this is where you could use water-soluble pencils or pastels, whatever you've got. But I thought the charcoal would give it a lot of oomph. I've got my gesso on a little yogurt lid as a palette. And I'm going to be painting the gesso into this line. Do not use your best watercolor brushes for this. Gesso and charcoal are going to make a mess of your really good brushes. So these are from the children's section of the office supply store. They were cheap. Now I've actually blotted a little bit of some gesso up here so that I can start pulling from that. And what I can do is I'm starting to work into the charcoal. And as I do this, I'm working into it and I'm pulling out into the paper at the same time. And what I'm going to do is I don't want to get this flower too charcoaly or too white from the gesso. But I am letting that work into the border of the flower and then pulling it out a little bit. And we're going to fix that in the next step with some color. But this is the first step, is to just work around that charcoal, pulling it out, making like a cloudy mess. Yeah, and then I am pulling a little bit of that gesso here. Okay? Because that's what's going to give me the grip when I add the color. And it's hard to explain. You don't want to get, like I said, you don't want to paint the whole thing with gesso. It's more that you're just pulling it in from spot to spot where it feels right. And initially you can see the color is dulled, but we are going to fix that in the next step. For the flower, I'm going to start with a soft chalk pastel. And again, these are pretty easy. You probably have some in your workspace in a shoebox somewhere, but if not, they're easy to source. And I'm going to use a pretty light touch here to go back and add some of that pinky color. I'm going to stay with the shape of the petals. And, you know, the great thing about this is it's super messy. But at the beginning, start with a lighter touch, and you can always layer and go in and add more. You can use a smudging tool. I can never find mine. By the way, the gesso is almost dry, but I didn't let it dry, so it's sort of damp. But you could do it damp or wet on wet. Now, let's see. I don't have any yellow pastels. So I'm going to use a water-soluble crayon. Ooh, you know what? I've got one in marigold. Let's add some marigold. It wasn't in the original color, but we're painting over, so I could go bonkers with that. In fact, maybe I should have made it blue. All right, I think I will. I'll add a little bit of blue right there. Again, you don't have to use the crayons. You could use more pastels or what you got. This is already looking, you know, pretty painterly. And, you know, but let's see what happens. And you could leave it at this step or play around more with the dry on gesso. But I'm going to see what happens when I activate this soft pastel and the water-soluble pencil with just some water on my brush. So I'm just going and waking that color up and softening it just a little. And you can also pull that out into the background. One thing that you can also do is while it is kind of wet now, and you can go back in and work dry on wet, which is going to give you a really dramatic. It really makes that pastel or even a water-soluble pencil pop. So it's damp, slightly wet, and that's what's happening here. I'm going to blend that just a little, but still leave it dramatic. And if you're not happy with it, you can always, you know, come back and soften it again with more water. Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. I like the drama, but I'm going to soften it a little bit more. Work it in, add some messy lines, work it out. And so just keep layering and painting. You can try a mixture of different pencils. I don't say play very often. I'm I prefer to work, but yeah, I think today we can actually say you can play around. Just play with this. Let's see. We'll do this guy. This was with the water-soluble pencil. Again, I'm just going to pull that out. Make it really abstract. This is how this looks, and it's good. I think I'm going to add a little bit more of a kind of a fanciful detail that you might not find in nature to give it some, make it really pop. And this is a soft chalk pastel in purple, a real plum color. And I'm lightly maybe adding some lines here, like veins in a flower petal. And I'll just go around with that. Next, as an optional step, I'm going to outline it with my water-soluble graphite pencil. Not everybody likes this effect, but I do. So by all means, leave it, or perhaps use a color. I think green would look good if you went around the whole thing in green. But I'm going to go, this is my look. And once again, I'm activating that line that from the black water-soluble pencil, pulling it out just a little, but I also want to leave some definition. Yeah, some softened definition. How's that? Work that in just a little. And so on. This wasn't in my original magazine clipping, but I'm going to add a little bit of foliage. And you could add other embellishing as well. This is more or less finished. Of course, it doesn't have to ever really be finished because you can keep working dry on dry, dry on wet. And you can see it's gone from looking like a shiny, glossy magazine page to an abstract painting that you've made. I'm going to add a little bit of oomph to our background. This is watercolor. It's a bluey purple, and it's very loose. I actually like to work with ink, but I don't have any blue ink here today. Now, I want this to be nice and loose. And what it's going to do is work into that gesso. And as it dries, it's going to dry a little bit lighter because that's what happens when you use wet color on gesso. And if it works into your flower a little, don't worry. Oops. And you can make this as robust if you want to make it like a real background or a shadow, or you could pull it out and just make it into a wash. I also added some white splatters that I made from mixing gesso and water together. Really thinned out the gesso and then just splattered it on there. I'm going to let that dry. Let's try it with something besides a flower. This is a bird that came from a bird watching magazine. I think it was 25 pence. And the background is a piece of paper from a sketchbook pad. Scrapbook pad. I've gone all around Mr. Bird with the heavy charcoal pencil. And now I'm going to quickly see what happens if we try the same technique to make him look abstract. You can see that I've lost almost all of the definition, and I'm going to lean into that. I've already started. I'm using a water-soluble pencil in blue, kind of a navy, and I'm just following the lines of where the wing was. Drawing birds is not my strong point, so I'm happy to follow those lines to show me where his shape is. And this is a green, a dark green. I'm not going to give him his original colors. I can do whatever the heck I want. So let's add some feathery shapes there. Okay, maybe I will go with the orange. I kind of really like that. And this is a crayon, water-soluble crayon. Let's pull that into the crown. This is another water-soluble crayon. And let's see, I think I had a blue. I've got a blue pastel. I'm going to activate these and come back and add the pastel. All right, so I forgot to say I am activating this with just water. And here, especially on this twig, to get the bark, I'm just kind of pulling the gesso back in. Here I'm going to be a tiny bit more careful because we definitely want his beak to look like that. Oh, you know what? Maybe we can exaggerate it a little bit. Why not? Yeah. He's angry. He's angrier than I expected. Okay, so let's not say he's more dramatic than I expected. Let's see. And I am going to keep adding, like I said, some details. It's still wet. And I can work into it with my soft pastel. And just add some mark making, basically. And mess around with it. I've softened that dry color now, and here on his crest, I thought it was the line was a little too hard for this look, so I actually pulled some of that orange out into the gesso-y background. And I'm going to do that here too with some of the blue. So the point is you can just keep picking up the color, moving it around, going back in and adding definition, losing definition. Make it look like you, your imagination. And I've made a green watercolor wash, very loose. And I'm just going to work that in here and there. It's not meant to be an exact shadow. It's just decorative. And to, add some more abstract color and effect. Now I'm going to do a portrait. It's from a coffee table book that I got for £1. It's like $1.25 at the secondhand bookstore. And it's Queen Elizabeth I. I'm going to do this very speeded up, but I wanted you to see the before picture and where it goes. And for this one, I'm not using the charcoal. I'm using a water-soluble pencil by Derwent, just like a watercolor. No, they're ink tints, sorry. But because it's giving me a thinner line, I'm using it on the side here and really bulking out that line. This is kind of a navy color, which I think will look good with the rough. Kind of matches that a little bit. And there you go. We've taken some shiny magazine and coffee table pages that were not much to write home about and turned them into freeform abstract paintings. And here's Queen Elizabeth I looking as though she is ready for Mardi Gras. Does she look like Andorra in Bewitched? And am I dating myself by that reference? There's lots of ways you can use these. You could just use this as the background for a journal page or a card, maybe. I'm probably going to, I could see trimming this and then folding it and making it a journal page. Adding some text maybe. Binding it in there. Lots of ways. You could also cut this out and use it for a focal point in another piece. If you like this channel and you'd like to support it to make a contribution, you can do that by going to Ko-fi. Just follow the link in the text box below here. If you have any feedback or any questions, please let me know in the comments, especially if you have ideas about how you would use these techniques. Let's compare notes. Until next week, get up and go make something. Bye.